Our next guest today is Hal Goode, Magistrate of Washington County, and also an announcer on WLSK 100.9. How do you?
You say that like with a question mark.
What is it?
Does
Do
that
you
mean,
consider yourself an announcer?
A
Is that the title?
broadcaster, a broadcaster, baby.
Thank you, Hal.
Yeah, I work as a broadcaster for a year or two anyway.
Yeah. We need to recruit you for Channel 6.
I've got a face for radio, so it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work too well with this. You're perfect for this. Look at you in your green. You look fantastic.
Yeah,
so.
St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. I thought I'd better start early.
There you are. There you are. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, we're happy to have you, Hal, because you're so busy that we can't ever get you on the show to find out what is going on.
Well, glad to
with
be
you.
here. You
Yeah.
got me, so
Yeah.
corralled now.
Yeah.
Lisa Haydon.
So
What's the
tell
name
me-
of the show anyway?
This is Community Focus on
Oh,
Washington
okay.
County.
Brought to you by Lisa Haydon.
You are.
I'm in the hot seat.
You
is
should
where I
be
really am.
honored to be on as
I am.
a Washington County resident who is now in Frankfort most of the time, I suppose.
Well, during the day, that's where I work. I work for a group called the Kentucky Association for Economic Development. Been there for 5 years now. And what that is, it's a nonprofit that we work alongside with economic developers around the state. We have about 600 members, and we do a group that works with different groups. One group I like to work with is the Kentucky Association for Manufacturers. There's a gentleman that we work with by the name of Ben Haydon. It's a close colleague of mine, and we like working with Ben. But we do any type of economic development studies for economic developers around the state to want to learn how to, on the industrial parks, small business, entrepreneurship, workforce development. We cater all those type of environments for job growth and capital investment. So it's a good group. I've enjoyed that. And still great to be a magistrate in Washington County, where I've been able to proudly serve District Number 3, which includes Mackville, Cardwell Battle, and then, of course, the Pottsville, East Texas area. And I've been doing that for a while. And Lisa mentioned I work with the radio station WLSK 100.9. I've been able to have the honor of doing radio for 28 years now in this area, where we do high school basketball, football, and a little bit of local news. And I've worked with Gary White and TV6, so it's a great partnership in local media, so I do enjoy all that. But I do live at 883 Texas Road. I was born there, raised there, and stayed there. So I drive that trip back and forth to Frankfort, and with a group that I also work with called Kentucky United, we travel all over the U.S. and recently traveled internationally. I was in Japan last week for a week where we did some really interesting visits. I really enjoyed that. That was quite an experience, but we're definitely going to see some job growth from that visit. So with Governor Bevin, our new Secretary Terry Gill for the Cabinet for Economic Development. So that's a whole lot in a little bit of time, but I do stay busy, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, you do stay busy. And so, of course, everyone recognizes your voice, Hal, having done broadcasting for so long. And, so they hear you on the radio, and you announce the games and broadcast the games.
Yeah.
And then you, of course, were the Economic Development Director for the Springfield, Washington County Economic Development Authority for, golly, how many years?
9 years of that, yeah. Enjoyed that. Started out in workforce development. I worked for Bob Mattingly at Central Kentucky Tool and Engineering in Lebanon, and really had a great career with those individuals. Traveled around the state. We did a lot of welding fixtures, jigs, any type of job shop work there, and that company's just grown. They do a wonderful job, Bill and Terry Mattingly, there in that area. So I really kind of cut my teeth in that part of the industrial world, and then got involved working in economic development here at SWEDA, and from there took off to KAD. So it's been a good whirlwind in economic development. It's really something that, I really feel like whenever you're able to work with someone to find a job, create a job, you've really made some great accomplishments. So I take a whole lot of value from what we do as a profession in economic development.
So here you were now. That was with, what did you say, with United?
Kentucky United.
Kentucky United.
Sure.
when you were in
Japan last week. Mm-hmm.
So were you there to encourage industry to come to Kentucky?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I guess it's best to tell what Kentucky United is. Kentucky United is a program we started through the Kentucky Association for Economic Development, which I might say is 50 years old this year, that nonprofit I work for. But it was started 8 years ago, back in 08 and 09, when we really hit tough times. I think a lot of folks call it the Great Depression. I know I did, because we saw job loss, we saw companies consolidate, and we also saw some severe cuts at the state level. We saw our economic development department get cut somewhere around 30%. So this is more of a P3, a public-private partnership, where we put together this Kentucky United, and we take our funds to help market Kentucky. And we do it in a united front. So whenever we're out maybe promoting what's going on in Springfield or Lexington, we're promoting the whole state. So if we can get something that will come to the state of Kentucky, that's what we look for. Our trip to Japan was just that. It was a mission trip where we had a reception. Governor Bevin was there, as I mentioned earlier, and we had over 100 Japanese plants that were represented at this one reception in Tokyo. And it's amazing, with the 1988 location of Toyota, what we've been able to see out of all the plants that were located from just Toyota. Over 180 Japanese plants have come to Kentucky just because of that one plant. And they're scattered naturally. We start looking around Marion and Washington County, they're here. During my visits over there, I got to meet with Yashura-san. A lot of folks remember Mr. Yashura. He was president of Toyotomi for a while. Now he's president over Toyotomi Kiko. So what a great visit we had to renew that. I met the president of TG Kentucky. So a lot of those folks from our area were there, as well as from other plants that are located in Kentucky. So yeah, we do visits like that. Next week we're sending a team to Dallas, Texas. They're going to meet with 28 consultants that do site selection. They're going to have Bill Samuels come from Maker's Mark to talk about bourbon, what's going on in Kentucky. But also while we're there, we're going to talk about what the workforce is like and what we're doing to make big steps in workforce development in the state of Kentucky. We're going to talk about the quality of life in Kentucky. We're going to talk about what it means to be able to come in and be profitable in Kentucky, and the steps that we're taking daily to ensure great investments are made here in the state. So our team of Kentucky United will do about 17 trips this year, and Chicago, they're going to go to Washington, D.C. during an event called Select USA. So a lot of international work compared with the work that we're just doing throughout the U.S. to market Kentucky, tell folks about the value of being a part of the Commonwealth.
And maybe we here in Washington County have a little advantage since we have a Washington County and on the state level.
My home is in Texas. That's East Texas. I think it's great. You mentioned what's going on in Springfield. Daniel Carney runs the Springfield, Washington County Economic Development Authority. Tom Lund runs the Marion County. We got great representation here in Marion and Washington County, and that's what it takes. It takes good leadership. You talk about magistrates and city council people. It's all about working together in economic development. It's not about one person. It's not about one thing you do. It's about the many things that are combined that you do, and you do well or you do right, that come back to help a community. So that's what it's really all about.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, of course, Hal, you know, people are talking about not being able, that, you know, we of course want more industry here and more jobs, but on the other hand, I hear sometimes that we don't have the manpower to. I mean, we don't have enough employees. Do you get that?
Workforce is critical, and I think workforce has to be treated like you would a flower garden, like my mother in Texas treats a flower garden. I mean, you have to make sure it's manicured. You have to make sure that it can grow, and I think a community has to do that. So what do I mean by that? I mean, not only do we have to make sure our workforce is educated, but we have to be training our workforce for the right occupations that are available here in our community. So that's why more K through 12, not just your high school, not just your trade school, you need to be putting out early what jobs are available in your community. For instance, we talked about Toyotomi earlier. You know, just think of the tool and die experts and the welders and the mechanics that are going to be needed the next 4 years at Toyotomi alone. Think about TG Kentucky and some of the trained, skilled labor they're going to be needing. Are we doing that in our high schools? And I think that's some things that the state is really looking at hard, is to make sure we are training and giving the skills to our young people to the jobs that are available in our community. And I think the second thing we need to do is we got to work on the infrastructure of our community. When I first became magistrate, one of the biggest things I wanted to do was to work with city water. We had somewhere around 20% of the county in city water, and fortunately at that time we were able to work with a lot of our leadership that was in Frankfort at that time. Mike Haydon was there to help us, Senator Dan Kelly. Working together, they were able to acquire grants, and now we're close to 95% of the county with county water. Now, some of that comes from some other counties, but can you imagine still being at 20% county water? Well, now we're seeing broadband be the big key, and we're seeing a county like Washington County with a small percentage of broadband availability out into rural areas. It's a must to have that. And more and more what we're doing, even at the Kentucky Association for Economic Development, and my position as magistrate, is keep showing emphasis on broadband. We need it in rural areas. Right along the Bluegrass Parkway, just think about it, you're only about 35 minutes from Lexington. We have doctors, we have professionals that live there that work in Lexington, that work in Versailles, at the Kentucky Community Technical Center, that work in Frankfort, that need that high-speed broadband to be able to do their job from home. So more and more we have to be able to provide not just that pipeline for city water, but that pipeline for technology has to be able to reach home. I see that the biggest thing that we need to be working on in our community the next 5 years. Along with all those things, Lisa, if you can pile them up and put them in a nice little pile, we need to start working on them just like we would a pile of leaves. Take them, bag them, get them out there, and let's take care of it so those pieces of the puzzle are available for a community, and that way a community will grow. Have those type of services. And I just named two. There's many others you can think about to help, but we got a beautiful community. We've got a great area here in Washington County. That's one thing I love to say. Wherever I go, if it's in Japan or if it's even, to Dallas, Texas next week, the only real Texas I love is Texas, Kentucky, out Highway 150 here. That passion for me is there. So, I think we have to be able to can that up, and I think communities can get there. But, it takes time and it takes money. And those are two things that are very critical for our leadership that have to be done in order for us to see some of those amenities in our community to grow. So more people need to locate.
Well, I think, don't we have something going on with the broadband that's, was the governor's initiative to expand, and so are we getting any of that here?
The program is called Kentucky Wired, and it's looking at more in the eastern Kentucky area, and that program is focused more on eastern Kentucky. But some of the things that we do, even through the Kentucky Association for Economic Development, is legislation. And we've seen two large bills with AT&T over the past 5 years that we've worked with on legislation that will allow them to enhance not only call centers, jobs that are available through that, but also just infrastructure alone. There's Senate Bill 10 this past session that came through that will allow AT&T and other groups to deregulate them to be able to come in and make more investments in that type of infrastructure. But that's still not enough. It takes so many dollars to be able to run that type of infrastructure. And that's why you're seeing Eastern Kentucky with the Kentucky Wired, which is a lot of federal money, but you're also seeing Kentucky really struggle, counties like Washington County struggle to find funds to get that wireless, to get either wireless or a broadband internet to some homes because of the sparse population. That's what happens. You have sparse population as you go. I know I live in a sparse population area. I live on the farm there in Texas. It's tough to run that type of infrastructure 2 miles down a road for 5 people. And that's what they're dealing with, because they're in business just like anybody else. But I think more and more as our leadership, locally, statewide, and federal-wide, that needs to be the major investment. That's going to be the turning point in our communities.
Well, and then, Hal, what about all this aeronautics or industry? I've told people before that we are big in that field in Kentucky, and soon to be #1 in our state as far as exporting
Yeah, exporting, the number one export in Kentucky right now is aerospace. And folks scratch their head about that, and they wonder why and how can we export. Most folks would say bourbon or automotive, but it's aerospace. And if you think about it, you know, the cost and what you would have. But in Madisonville, there's a GE plant that makes the engines in northern Kentucky as well. There is, right real close to here in this area, Meggitt Brake is located in Danville. And what more important for an airplane than to have their brakes? And that's what they make at that plant. So more and more you're seeing institutions that are taking that, and they're really making it a priority as part of their curriculum. Morehead State University, as a matter of fact, is working with an aerospace program, but you're going to see more and more emphasis on aerospace and the steps that are taken on that, and surely from the exporting piece alone, we're seeing that value that's going to be out there. I think that's going to be another niche, another market that Kentucky can capitalize on.
Yeah, yeah. That's exciting. You know, different from the auto industry.
Diversification, which we strive for so much. When I was in Japan, I went to a food expo where there were, 250,000 people that came in 3 days. But, you know, you look at what is out there in the food industry. You know, we talk about the bourbon industry in our area, but look at what goes along with that. You know, a lot of folks within the bourbon, and then, you know, you have the cheese, you have what you can mix with bourbon. In Japan, they were mixing a type of vinegar with bourbon, and it's just amazing what you're seeing with the craft beer business. And then just food in general, you know, a major piece that takes a lot of water to do any type of food production, but I think more and more is what communities are looking for, is that diversification. Not to get away from automotive, I think that we found our niche there, but to, you know, to have that additional piece. I think Flowers Food is a great example in Bardstown that is so focused on the food part. So those are some good things to look at, and then the state's doing a nice job in marketing towards that.
Well, certainly the bourbon industry is, you know, huge, and getting bigger all the time. Every time I turn around, somebody's building a plant. I mean, a new a warehouse or a new plant up to distribute bardstown, and distribute bourbon. So, you know, I think that's a good thing for Kentucky. We certainly, Bardstown can claim to be the bourbon capital of the world, but I think all of Kentucky is going to be before long.
Well, you got Napa Valley in California. What a similar thing we have going in our area with the bourbon industry. You know, you ought to be calling us the bourbon holler in this area because, quite frankly, you know, the visitors that come in, the intrigue, the interest in how it's done. I think the thing that gets lost in the bourbon so many times is the agriculture piece that comes along with it. Look at how many contract farmers in our area alone have got involved in that part of the bourbon industry, whether it be for not only Beam Global, but it can also be for your for some of your other, you know, Wild Turkey in Lawrenceburg, Buffalo Trace in Frankfort. We have several contract farmers in our area that are supplying big contracts to all those industries. So it's a big industry, and it's one that has a lot of growth and is still growing, and it's international. My trip to Japan, we went to Centauri, which has bought out Beam and Maker's Mark, and had a chance to visit with that group. And what a history with Centauri and what they're able to do in Japan, and buying out the American presence of Jim Beam and Maker's Mark.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you're right about, I was talking with a farmer not very long ago over in Marion County. You know, they growing corn for Maker's Mark. And you know, it takes a lot to make that bourbon.
And you know, these contract farmers are hiring a lot of individuals. They're you know, agriculture is a big part of our community. You can ask anybody. I mean, the farming community is hungry for these type of avenues, these type of ventures that they can look at to get involved with. So yeah, let's see where we can build on from that. I think you're already seeing some of the contract farmers that are not only doing the cultivation of the grain and whatever, the barley that goes along with anything that have to do with bourbon, but they're doing contract labor. Maybe that'd be bulldozing, maybe that'd be farm repair, doing tiling, in different farms. So it's really expanded into more of an agricultural venture rather than just a bourbon business.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's what you might call trickle-down economics when you have.
Call it job
There's
creation,
job
creating
creation,
jobs.
yeah. There's a lot
There you go.
of people involved in that.
There you go.
And with the building those warehouses.
That's correct.
And things of that nature.
And the school tax that comes from that. I mean, hey, it all falls.
It
all circles around. You're
helps
right.
the city, helps the county, helps,
right.
yeah.
All trickle
everybody.
down.
Yeah, yeah. So that's really good. I want to see us get on the Washington County, get on the Bourbon Trail.
There you go. Next challenge.
And you know,
Madam Council Person, that's your
Jim
next
Beam
challenge.
started right here in Washington County out at
Certainly
Madden.
did.
I'm going to have Fred. No, he needs to be a guest on our show to talk about his great grandfather. I guess it would be his great. I don't know. I think great grandfather.
Yeah.
That started Jim
You interview
Beam.
Fred No, I want a copy of that one. That'll be a good interview.
So,
Those of you that don't know what I'm talking about.
so we have a history of bourbon right here in Washington County.
Without a doubt.
Yeah,
Without a doubt.
And so what else, Hal, would you like to discuss with us today?
Well, you know, it's a pleasure to be on your program. And, you know, Lisa, I think one thing that I'd like to comment with you on is your activity and how active you are in the community. I commend you for doing this program. I think that's great to have another forum to be able to tell folks what's going on in Washington County and Springfield and what steps are being taken. So I
You'll
commend
have to
you.
thank Gary White for that.
Thank you, Gary White. Appreciate what you're doing. I know you've been doing this many years, my friend. You're kind of like me.
And we're delighted
good.
that he, you know, that Gary does provide this service, you know, television for our local.
And the other thing I was
folks.
just going to comment is we're in the historic 1816 courthouse, which as a magistrate I was a part of the working with Judge John Settles and the other magistrates when we came in and did all the work and the refurbishing of not only the old courtroom but also the museum, which if anyone from Washington County would like to come down, I encourage you to come down and look at the book, the guest book, and see how many people that are coming in here to see about the history that starts here about Lincoln. I think it's really interesting how we've been able to put together such a nice little venue to come and visit that's a part of our heritage, because I think this courthouse, when I think of Springfield, Washington County, I think of our historic courthouse and the cupola and what it means. I think about my dear friend Bubba Robinson, who was county clerk here for many years, who suggested I run for magistrate, you know, sitting in his office and, you know, and coming here into the courtroom, just the history of it that's involved here. If you have not been here, please make it a point to come.
Yeah. Well, and how, you know, there are people that people don't even realize how many tourists we get into this county that come to Lincoln Homestead State Park and to the Lincoln Legacy Museum because of their interest in Lincoln.
And I think, you know, another thing that we sometimes look for in the tourist industry, it's great. It's a part of economic development, tourism is. But if you're from Willisburg, if you're from Cardwell, from Rush Grove, if you're from Calvary, if you're from over in Manton or St. Mary's or Raywick, you know, the activities that go on in our community, Springfield and Lebanon, you know, you're missing out on a whole lot. You know, both communities have a super theater that always have entertainment. The museums that we've talked about from here and in Lebanon, it's all right under your nose. So I really am gratified even more. It's great to have people from out of the country that come to these museums, but even out of the state. But I'm even humbled more when we have our own folks that come here.
Yeah.
Because I know I run into so many and say, oh, I haven't been there yet. I haven't had a chance to go by. Well, you need to take just a few minutes of your time to come by and enjoy this, because it's all your history and it's all your heritage, whether it be the history centers in Lebanon or Springfield, or the theaters and the folks that are performing, because it's here, it's available for you, very cost efficient. It's on a family. If you're on a family budget, you can afford it. So I encourage you to participate.
Exactly. I'm glad you said that, Hal. That's very important. And you know, now we've got all these things happening with our Judge Settles. We interviewed him a little while ago, and we were talking about the restoration of the covered bridge. And all of these beautiful historic things that we have right here in Springfield and Washington County. And as you said, we've got a great park here. We've got a wonderful new library.
Yes.
I mean, there's just so many things people need to just come in and take advantage of.
Yeah, it's a great area. You know, the best part of my Japan trip was coming down Highway 150, seeing that "Welcome to Texas" sign. So this is a great area to live in. So yeah, you know, we need, and as residents of this area, we need to appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, and Hal, of course, your lovely wife, Mary Lynn, still works here in Springfield at the Springfield State Bank.
She does, Mary Lynn. I'll be married 31 years at the end of May. So
congratulations.
Yeah, I've been very blessed with that. Very,
yes.
very blessed.
And your mother, Norma, is still out at Texas.
My mother has a birthday on April the 12th. She'll be 80 years old. So if you see this, please wish her a happy birthday from her favorite son, Hal. You need to tell him Hal because there's two others.
Yeah, there's two other favorite sons.
Yeah, she's a great woman. And my father passed 8 years ago, is Denny, and then my brother Jeff, he and his wife Melissa live here in this area, and my sister Elaine married Donnie Hurst. People know Mary Agnes, Donnie's mother, lives here in town. They live up in Powell County now. So, but we've been able to live out here in this area. So,
and your two nice children.
Yeah.
One is now married.
That's right. Erin, my daughter, is 27. Erin Ennis. She married last April to John Ennis, who is a horse trainer. He's from Ireland, so we're going to have an interesting mix with Goode and Ennis, with that Irish, whatever the Goods are. I mean, you take your pick. They want to say German, but I think it's Dutch, but we'll find out. And then my son Matthew. Matthew graduates in May from Eastern. He'll have a degree in turf management. He's already got a job. He'll be working for Berea College, so he'll be staying here in Kentucky. So we're excited about that.
Great.
Excited about that.
Yeah.
Loved it. Yeah, he loved the community. Worked out Lincoln Homestead, and he's been working at Slugger Field, and he's enjoying that. So, good for him. Good for kids.
Well, Hal, thanks so much for being here today. You've just
sure.
filled us in on, give it your magistrate sign right there.
Give that to Lisa. Now, she'll use that for the next interview. No, my pleasure to be here, and good to work with you. And please keep up the good work in these interviews.
Yeah, well, Hal, thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.